and we'll email it back immediately, give you all the details. We tell you all the schemes. We're capable of building roughly 1,000 euros house in every couple of years. So please get on to this. Just Cllr, come out of the lines. It's a website. It's very well done. So just put your name down.
It's actually a good website.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Right. So just a couple of observations there. That first presentation, I know you went through very quickly, talking about the misconception that's being born happened. We were comparing 13 years and 7 years of being there, so I'm not being there. Showed 13 years versus
actually, I gave you the annual average, but
no, I know,
so
but
I'll just check that.
13 years versus 7. But I suppose the thing that we're all not talking about is the elephant in the room, seeing Cllr popping up and down in government. So you're all talking about policy, and policy isn't working, and they've got the relaxed attitude from the government, yet things while they're popping up. You're doing supply confidence and supply. So, you're kind of removing yourselves blaming policy, but yet you're popping up in the door. So I just don't see, you're saying you're delivering affordable housing, present tense, I don't see it.
I just want to clarify, so on the figures that I actually showed, 2011 to 2016 was the total homes we average per year, 508. On the other was 27 to 2010, because we were doing it for but if we'd actually gone back, so that's actually 4 years per hour, but if you'd actually gone back to 06 or 05, you'd actually see the figures, there would have even been more. What I tried to do is...
What I could say in response to that is before we failed the bank sector.
Oh no, you could.
You're not comparing.
Sorry, you could absolutely say that, but if I put in a 5-year period, you'd actually see that average increase higher, because it was more delivered. So what I was trying to show in that was effectively, even in the toughest of years, which was 08, 09 and 2010, that homes were still being built then, and public housing was still being delivered. So if I went back...
I disagree that they were the toughest years, considering where we are now with people and housing mix. So
it was in the midst of the crash. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the big thing is confidence and supply. You are backing the policy that's in government at the moment by backing the government.
And do you have a question then?
Yeah, is Georgia Stepper on the list of assets to be sold at the moment?
No, that's what I'm saying. It was originally, it was earmarked for sale a number of years ago. But the council ourselves are looking at seeing if we can develop it. Because the 12 units that Mel referred to in his presentation, the award-winning actually 12 units there on Kelly's Avenue and onto George's Place. The site neighbouring that, so the back of the old fire station, is to be developed through Part 8, hopefully.
Is that social housing?
So it could be multi-unit, so it's actually zoned major town centre. So that would include office, residential, and possibly retail units all within that one site.
Public owned or privately owned?
Well, it depends on the Part 8, but I presume there will be a mixture of public and private on that one.
You mean the 10% of the Part 5?
Well, no, it depends if the council itself is developing it, which could be, a mixture between affordable, if we see the affordable get off the ground. And that's the big elephant in the room, if you don't mind me saying, because the government have said that the affordable housing is there, but in actual fact people can't apply for it yet, and they've said it's been there for a while. But just if I may, just from what Darragh has just said there about confidence and supply, without getting into what happened in 2016 after the general election, it was either have a general election again, which wasn't showing any signs of any change in the public mood, or in public decision making, and or support an alternative non-Fine Gael government, which Neil Martin was put forward as leader, and or support Enda Kenny again, which ultimately the only way through was a confidence and supply, and we aren't in government, so we are. Neil Martin is the leader of the opposition. Darragh is in opposition, and it is important that we state our differences between the government, the party in government, and indeed our own position. And that's what tonight is about. Tonight is about actually talking about the housing in the round, talking about the issues that we're facing as a society, the issues that both Michael and Justin spoke about their own generation, the challenges that people are facing, trying to get a home, be it a as I say, of all the various types.
No, I was just going to go back to one of the things Michael said about people moving back in with parents and grandparents. And there's a phenomenon as part of that, that there are people who would like to downsize, but can't downsize either because the house is full to the brim with 3 generations, or because they fear it might become full to the brim with 3 generations, and they'd like to downsize. And so we've got housing stock tied up because of that phenomenon. Whereas if people, like Michael described, had access to affordable housing, there'd be much more certainty, and people would be able to move to the house that's comfortable for them for the stage of life that they're at. But at the moment they can't.
Choice, if we can say, choice is a big thing there
Sorry,
as well.
can I say about that?
Sure, yeah.
Is that, well, because we have 3 generations in our house, 2 new families, so, and the thing about it is that while you might love to downsize and have less work to do, you also have to think that what you need your house for is to pay for your nursing home, which is going to be a huge problem. So what am I thinking of giving away my house? And who's going to pay for my nursing home? Who? It's going to be my house, isn't it? Because the young generation haven't got the time or the energy to look after the older generation. So there's no point about talking about urgent. For some of us, maybe for some people, they have a pot of money as well. But if all you have is your home, well then you can't possibly get rid of it. You know? And the other thing that I say is the last thing we want to hear is we can look at that and think about it. What we want you to be saying is we are going to put our foot down when we see an opportunity that will work. We are not going to think about it, we're not going to discuss it, we are not going to listen to the residents, which, I mean, it would be very silly if we thought that the residents in Mount Merrion didn't want social housing. Of course they don't. It's an upmarket area, and they are also very strong voters. So the politicians don't want to offend them because they go out and vote for them, right? And they don't want public, so you're going to give in to them. That's what happens all the time. That's what happens. You don't get any votes in working class areas or people who haven't got very much money. You just don't get it. So you please the people who have the money and the education. And there is nobody in the Dáil. I mean, I've seen them. I mean, you go, they're all professional, well-educated, well-off people. Why haven't you got some kind of working class people or people who are just, I don't mean people who are barely coping, like you there with your job. Why aren't they having some say in policies?
Well, can I just add, because I'm in the Dáil, right?
Yeah.
I come from a very normal working family. I had a normal profession.
But you have a home.
Oh, well, I don't mind telling you, I bought my home with my wife in 2006 and I'm still in negative equity. I bought a 3-bedroom duplex house in Malahide, and I put that on the record for 580,000, and that was a reasonable price apparently at the time. So I've seen that, and my generation, I'm 44 now, who actually bought in that period of time. You know, so there's those issues. So, you know, this is the only job I do. I gave up my previous job like most others when we came into Leinster House.
Yeah.
So I would say that it is more representative. I don't believe, I would just challenge respectfully one element that and Cormac will talk about his own ward area here. But I can tell you in all my time as a public rep since 2004, and most of my colleagues I can speak from my own party, other parties can talk for themselves, I've never objected to a social housing scheme. Never.
No, maybe you haven't.
No, I think it's important that I say that.
Oh, but you're not living in Mount Merrion.
No, but sorry, I don't. Mount Merrion can talk for itself, but I think, in fairness, a lot. Some other left-wing parties will also have you believe that they have never. But I think if you look at the records of what councillors do in your own local authorities, you'll actually you may be surprised by some who object to some of these developments, who are the same who purport to be the ones who are supportive of public housing. And
well,
then
it would be nice if we knew
very
people,
different.
if they stood up and publicly said they object to these things, it would be nice. Because then we would really know, you know.
I acknowledge what you say about that NIMBY, not my backyard syndrome. I know that the current Minister of Culture on that Mount Merrion site, the meteoric rise in politics was on the back of that site.
Yeah.
And she became a councillor, and then a TD, and then a minister based on that single site. Now, there's no way that someone in my situation, as a new type of politician, who's experienced this, you know, generation, this lost generation.